Well, it was 6 years ago, and one of my former students from Stanford University came here to do volunteer work, and he worked with Jeffrey Wills on the ideas for the space for the new campus. The university had just been given this land, and so they developed a space plan for 20 years, what buildings and what spaces would be needed. It's more a list of spaces and sizes and just the basic ideas. But then we needed a physical plan, a layout for the campus. And so my friend and former student John Lucero and I discussed this, and I offered my time and volunteered to direct the master plan, to work with the university faculty and staff, and then I was able to get some of my graduate students at the University of Oregon to help. And sometimes when you do a plan, you don't know what's really going to happen with it. But this one, I think, you know, evolved just as we had hoped it would. And as I said before, I think this will be a unique campus plan because of the courtyards and the quadrangles. I think that's what it will hold it all together. From the beginning, we thought that the idea of the cloisters or the courtyards was important because in the historical architecture here in Western Ukraine, we visited the monasteries and the beautiful courtyards they had. And then in other countries, the traditions of the academic courtyard, you have it in Cambridge and Oxford, England, and in Heidelberg, and in the United States at Stanford and Virginia. The courtyard was important. So the idea was to make these three courtyards, defined spaces, with a main space that the church would face. And the church, it's so nice to come back here and see it, excuse me, under construction right now. So with the church in the center of the whole campus, facing the main quadrangle, the main courtyard, and then the other buildings around it. And then we decided that the second courtyard should orient to Strisky Park, to the alley of trees, and so that the park would come in to this courtyard. And this is being built now. These two buildings are finished. And then there would be a third courtyard for the residential, the student residences. And now, of course, we have half of this built. So the idea then is to make these spaces that gather the university community together, but they still reach outward into the city. I think we felt at the beginning that the church is the most important building on the campus, so that it should be the center, and it should be a large building. It's actually going to be a little bigger than what this model shows. So it's the focus of the campus because this is a religious institution, Catholic university. After we did the overall plan, we did studies for the buildings, but we knew that an architecture company had to do the real work because it's very technical and takes a long time. So we sent out an invitation to, I think it was 17 of some of the best architects in the world, and then they wrote back to us and they responded to us, and we narrowed the list down to, I think, 3 or 4 architects, and then interviews were held. And these buildings were designed by Kelman, McKinnell, and Wood, which is a very good architectural office in Boston. They do a lot of work for Harvard University and all the best universities. So they had a lot of experience with residence halls and academic buildings. So they came in here being, you know, some of the best in the world in terms of knowing how to do these buildings. The staff here at UCU, Andre and Jeffrey Wills and others, they did outstanding work in selecting all these details in the highest quality materials. The architects don't do everything. They kind of do the big picture, but then it takes a lot of time to select the right windows and the flooring and the elevator, everything, the heating plants. And you have a very progressive energy strategy here to save energy. The triple glazing of the windows, this is all thought out. The engineering is thought out very well by the staff here at UCU. So it's great to come back 6 years later and see these two buildings finished and then the church now under construction. And the quality of these buildings is extremely high. These are better quality than student residences than I've seen in the United States or in Germany. The good things about this location is the park, being right on the edge, very beautiful park. Someday this park will be restored and maintained better. And then you do have the major street here, so the campus will be very visible in the city. When people go down the street, they'll see the campus. And someday maybe a concert. The idea would be for a concert hall here and an auditorium and a museum, a martyrs museum or another museum, and a hotel, conference center, that those things would be more on facing the main street. So I think that will get done, will get built someday, but maybe it's 10 years off or 15 years off if enough funds are raised to do that. But all of these types of projects, they, as I said before, they take 25 years or more to build, so you have to see this as a long process. When I first visited here, we had this big, ugly Soviet building that was under construction, and then they just abandoned. And there were discussions here to try to use that building and to finish it, but that would have been terrible because well, for one thing, it was a horrible building, but the second thing, it would have been the wrong symbol to have this university in this old Soviet building. So it was expensive to take that down, but I think that was the right decision. Mm-hmm. This space turned out really nice. I think the dining hall is beautiful. It looks out onto the church, and it's just a nice big space with lots of light. And so I think the university makes a strong statement for all of Ukraine in saying that this is the future and this is the high quality. So I think it serves the university, but it also, I think, contributes to the city as a whole and to the country, showing this high of quality. Yeah. Well, the architect Michael McKinnell wanted the idea of those lounges on the corner and looking out into the park. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a really great idea, so that you can come down there and you have a social space and you look out, because the park is still the main amenity here in nature. So I think that's how that happened. And then this terrace is the same. You can come out of the building in nice weather, and when all this construction is finished, you'll have a beautiful space down here, and then you'll look out into the park. So someday, maybe within 3 or 4 years, this will be a beautiful space that'll look like the park. Maybe that alley of trees will be extended into into the space here. Well, when we started this, we studied the historical traditions of the university in the world. And we studied the monastery plans as well. And if you go around Western Europe in the newer universities, the campuses are not very well planned. They put buildings, the modern campuses, they put buildings here, buildings there, but there's nothing holding it together. They're just a bunch of individual buildings. So there was the idea here to bring things together around these quadrangles, these courtyards, or you could call them cloisters. So this has a very different idea than most of the modern university campuses you will find in Europe or even in the States, because here it's more tight, it's more closed together. And so you have a community then around these spaces. When people go to Oxford and to Cambridge, they really like those spaces between the buildings, and the buildings are grouped around those spaces, and that's the main idea here. So this will be very different than most of the new universities that you find in Europe.